call the meeting to order. Roll call, Jeff?
Here.
Tony?
Here.
Melinda? Here. Mike?
Here.
Rain?
Here.
Tiffany? Here. Myself? Here. Next thing we have is the review of common commitments. So I have them in here in front of me. And I don't know if you just want to go around the room and read a couple of them off, each of us. I'll start. Participate with humility over pride, forgiveness. We are all here to make decisions that are best for all of our students.
No enemies at the table, just differences. Prioritize productive discussion. Here to Robert's Rules of Order.
Start on time, respect others' time, stay in your lane. Board responsibility should not flow over to administration.
Dedication to researching issues and agenda items. Recognize and celebrate successes.
Follow policies and procedures and don't take offense to questions.
Thank you.
Don't assume or be judgmental. Seek clarification and common understanding of policies. Commit to being our best, working together, growth mindset. Refrain from interruptions and gotcha moments. Commit to our community.
To be able to tell accountable for commitments, own it, ask for forgiveness, ask questions politely and respectfully, refrain from accusations, seek out training and assistance to understand board library, be kind, direct, respectful, just to others, and conflicts professionally, address issues at the appropriate time, and the impact of those benefit engage in something constructive.
Retreat idea. How do you prefer to be addressed? How does accountability work best for you?
Okay. Very good, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, our workshop topic for tonight is a book study. Do I have a motion to go into discussion for book study discussion chapter 3, communication is key?
I'd like to make a motion to move into the book study discussion, chapter 3, communication is key.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tony. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so we will open it up for discussion with the communication for chapter 3.
How many people answered all the questions in the worksheet? Probably everybody, eh? Why don't we start by taking chapter 3 and everybody writing down, and I'll pass out these sticky notes. The top 3 takeaways that you had from chapter 3. What was the chapter? Communication? Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Communication is key, yeah.
Jeff there. This is a lot of pages. I think it was pushing 30 pages.
Mhm. You want just like all of them on one sheet?
Yeah, all of them on one if you can fit it, otherwise a couple. Talked a little bit about committee of the whole versus committees, strengths and weaknesses of each, pros and cons. What is the board's most important task? That one was on page 39. Bridge structures, examples of bridge structures. What are the authors getting at on page 42 about understanding operational staff fears? So operational staff fears would be teachers' fears, just employee fears. On the top of 52, it talked about the appropriate response to a parent complaint. and why D is the correct answer. And I think we have artificial intelligence transcribing our meeting for us, so we'll get an artificial intelligence summary of our conversation that we can share. I can take that, please.
Sorry.
Okay, we've got a lot of different topics here, a lot of different top threes. Understanding the pros and the cons of the board as a whole and committees. That was a common one. What are some of the pros and cons of the board as a whole, committee of the whole, which we are doing? instead of just a bunch of committees, you know, where you have the traditional structure of 3 board members on a committee type of thing. Jeff?
Forces everybody to be aware of every situation. So we're all accountable for the decisions we make, whereas committees, smaller committees, you have to trust and rely on the smaller groups of people. And it can be kind of difficult at times for people to do that.
If there's a lack of trust, it can be difficult. Yeah. If there's high trust, it saves a lot of time. Because with a committee as a whole, everybody's getting all of the information and all of the details. Where if it's just smaller committees, 3 individuals would be getting fed that information. Good. Surveys are an excellent tool to gather data, especially surveys where you can glean longitudinal data to improve areas or discover areas of opportunity. Do you guys know, have we historically ever, and you've been on the board the longest, Tiffany, have we used surveys?
Yeah,
We have?
yeah, I think there's one done yearly for high school, seniors,
Their exit survey?
Yep, the spring break, we sent a survey out for that. There's been survey for graduation. So yeah.
Okay. Good. Another is complaints. Have a process to address them. A process for parents, constituents, staff, students. As a board member, we should never go into solution mode. Listen. Repeat back what you think the complaint is, get confirmation, pass along the information to the appropriate person, and maybe follow up if to ensure that the complaint got resolved with the individual. And we have a chain of command with that, so yeah, good. Okay, so this is being aware of the advantages and drawbacks of the committee structure. The same message may have different viewpoints depending upon the broadcast of a message. I think what they're talking about on one of these pages here, it talked about in the middle of that page, I remember the reading series. So if you look at page 39, in the middle of that page, that school district adopted a reading series. And the board, with their strategic view, they had a perspective on it that was totally different than the administration's view on the adoption of that textbook series. And very different than what the teachers had in the adoption of it. And all 3 agreed we're going to adopt the reading series, but how they went about it and how they thought it would be adopted and implemented were 3 different things. Anybody want to talk about how they perceived that? I think it was what, page 39 in the middle there. If you look at that quickly. I think that's what this person's alluding to. People in different roles construe the same action differently because of the lens that they're looking at it from.
I think the board typically would look at it as, oh, it's no problem, we can implement that. And, you know, when can you get started? And the administration says, oh, hold on a second here. Yes, we can do it. However, we need to come up with a plan. We need to introduce it. And we work with the staff and make sure that it's well thought out and planned and executed properly with some thought to it. And then the staff is thinking, how the heck can I fit that into my already overloaded schedule? What am I going to do with my current teaching plan? How am I going to fit that in there? What am I going to do? People plan their instructions way in advance, and that could, as you mentioned, it's going to have a different response depending on what cue that is looking at that plan. So
yeah, where you're at in the organization, because we all see things from a different perspective. Good. Let's see. Oh, whoever did this had 4 instead of 3. Board members have more conversations with parents and community than teachers directly, leading to different viewpoints. Yeah, I think that could be part of why we all have different viewpoints. Teachers and staff should feel more obligated to conduct and be open to all board members. Feel more obligated to conduct and be open to all of the board members, teachers and staff. I think I'm trying to remember back here in the chapter what part that was.
I think that ties into the with the first message that I had on there, that, you know, the communication there, that if there's issues, they need to be brought, not just a certain group of board members, but to all of them. Clearly, you know, I feel that there's a distinction of who the teachers can communicate or want to communicate with versus just some of them.
Yeah,
You know, and that's hard to say and to prove and to be point, but it's part of the communication issue, I think, here.
I think you're right, Mike. On page 42, if you look on page 42, operational staff fears. You see that? Is it at the bottom, if I remember right? The bottom there. It talks about operational staff fears. Good intentions aren't enough. I highlighted that. It matters how you communicate intentions across roles. In communicating with staff, we have to keep in mind three things, and then they list these three things. And the hidden meanings, you know, there's so much truth in this. The hidden meanings that people take from our body language, in our comments, in our tone, in how we say something, what we say, what we don't say, and how people, you know, parents and staff that are watching us as a board or a governance team, and they're analyzing at the top of page 43, it talks about they're analyzing everything that we say and that we do. And they're forgetting a little bit that it's a little bit out of context, because I don't think everybody truly understands the work that goes in to preparing for a meeting and the communications that take place behind the scenes and the reading and effort that goes into each decision that gets made. Because, you know, we have the agenda up here, but the full packet with all the attachments and memos a lot of times isn't sifted through to the high degree that you as a board member spend on that. And also the second one was some staff and some people in the community, no matter where we are, I'm not talking about Wrightstown, I'm talking about anywhere in our country, think that the board has unlimited power. When, you know, we know, and you know, that the board's power, really, there's limits to the power. There's political limits. There's strategic decisions that have to be made. There's organizational changes that can take place that can hamper the levels of power. And then the last thing regarding understanding the operational staff fears, it talked a little bit about staff members assuming that any board initiated change will likely not be good for staff, and that boards can show a lack of concern for their needs. So that's a perception that easily can be portrayed, taking things out of context and in how we act and interact with each other. So that was a good one, Mike. Another one, board power is restricted or should be in many ways, just like what we were just talking about there on page 43. Resist the urge to use your board position to please your friends or your neighbors. That's a good one. It's easy to fall into that trap. Talking to my neighbor, they've got opinions, they have maybe an agenda, they have priorities, their children. When, as a board member, we're looking after every child, not just my kid. We're looking after all the kids. The next one is elicit feedback and share survey data to all. Be sure data is reliable, timely, and relatable. And we talked a little bit about surveys. Another thing about surveys, when you look on page, what was it? Was it 47? I know 47 is something I want to hit on. I don't know if that's the one with where it's talking about,
Yeah, it has,
was it?
student achievement, learning environments, satisfaction surveys, quality of staff.
I think it's 46.
46. Yeah, 46 and 47 have two tables there, two charts. And yeah, all these satisfaction surveys, if you look on page 47, there's 5 columns. And one of the columns talks about satisfaction surveys. And if the board wants to move, which I recommend that we do, to create a strategic plan so that we have goals that we're focused on, we would create probably 4 or 5 categories, very similar possibly to what's on page 47. One is student achievement, another is learning environment, the third is satisfaction surveys. And when you talk about that, like Rain said, you're talking about parent satisfaction surveys, you're talking about student satisfaction surveys, and community satisfaction surveys. And some districts also do the business community satisfaction surveys, especially, you know, our community with our youth apprenticeship program. We have 46 students in youth apprenticeship. That's a high number for a school district our size. And our kids on annual, I think this year in 24-25, made approximately $330,000 of money they earned from businesses doing their youth apprenticeship. So yeah, these satisfaction surveys would be something that we would do if we wanted to do that annually. In the first year is kind of a benchmark year, and you look at how your data and those surveys came out. And then the goal is to improve. So the next year when you do your satisfaction survey, that there's some growth. And parents are more satisfied, staff and students as well. The fourth column is quality of staff, and the fifth is finance. Okay, the next top 3 here is time spent communicating rather than doing. Another is board committees only save time if at a whole board meeting, their members resist the urge to replay the committee meetings to catch up the rest of the board. And that's exactly right, because when you have the committees, there has to be a high level of trust so that when the committees come and make a recommendation for the board, there would be a summary, but the rest of the board doesn't get into the weeds and of all the details of what would be recommended. And the third on this form here, this paper, is take formal and informal surveys of the community into consideration. Okay. Communicating across systems and roles is another one highlight from somebody from this chapter, talking about the administration, the board, the teacher. So we're talking about the strategic role, the tactical role, and the operational roles, making sure that we had some communication. And if you look at that page 47 that we're talking about, is that the communication board or is that a different page?
No, that, I can add to that, Ron. On page 47, the example of strategic communication board, you kind of touched on it already. But what I would like the board to be aware of is the different types of communication, from student achievement, learning environment. We talked about satisfaction surveys, quality staff, and finance. So examples of student achievement would be state assessment results, achievement tests, and then common assessments that are aligned with district grade level or subject level essential benchmarks, graduation rates, number of students in high school advanced placement courses, results compared to benchmarking other districts, results compared to high performing districts. That's all under student achievement. And so there's a strategic plan for that communication. Taking a look at a strategic plan for communication in the learning environments would be focused on attendance rates, organization health survey, class size, discipline resulting in suspension, expulsions, or referrals, facility utilization, facility needs assessment. A needs assessment is really good to determine what you need to improve facilities. State report card, student data, benchmarks, again, across highest to maybe mediocre districts. We talked about satisfaction surveys. We do that with student satisfaction surveys, parent satisfaction, community satisfaction surveys. And we need to do more of those, as well as staff satisfaction. And then quality of staff communication, taking a look at high quality staff, percentage of staff who have master's degrees that are continuing in their education program. You know, what can we do to help with that in terms of professional development, in addition to the communication for that. Competitive salary comparisons across the board with teacher salaries as part of a communication, staff attendance records, number of grievances, staff retention data, state report card data, again, compared to benchmark districts or highest performing districts. And then the last communication strategic plan focusing on finance is taking a look at your state financial rating, your debt audit findings, cash reserves, budget to actual balance in all operating funds, and financial data such as revenues, expenditures per pupil compared to benchmark districts and compared to highest performing districts. So I just put that, I really like this table because it breaks down the communication plan strategically across all the different things that organization or a school institution has to look at. And so when you look at that, I mean, there's a lot of information that is being communicated, and how it's being communicated could be misinterpreted, right? Or miscommunicated if we don't really have a good understanding of that. So it's more strategic in how we would communicate across those 5 different variables.
And you're right. And I think a lot of times you look at, it's called a communication board, because there are things that we typically aren't sharing out really frequently. And if that were something like our strategic plan, for instance, and those were our measurements, we would communicate that out on a regular basis and maybe annually post it and send it so that staff and parents and the community are very well aware of it.
Yeah.
Instead of just the board being aware.
Yeah, it'd be like a dashboard. You know, typically, and I know, you know, Mike and Tony, you know, when in the industry, we have those dashboards, especially in trades, right? On, you know, the goals that we're trying to achieve and how that's used for communication. So, I mean, I guess it would be something good for, I think, the community to see a dashboard of that, you know, annually or ongoing. So, yeah.
What does the board think of that?
I guess I'd have to see all panel. I'm just looking at it from a manufacturing side, but I'm used to seeing in our metrics and things like that. But there's definitely probably some room to showcase, you know, our KPIs, what we have for our district, and then where are we advancing at them, at what rate.
Yeah.
I think, Randy, you set a pretty good precedent to that with your 100-day plan coming in already. To kind of seeing where things are going and taking the initiative to lay out what's going on, where you're at, what your goals are, things like that. So on your end, I think you've done a great job. That's appreciated because it's been helpful.
Well, thank you. Well, pretty soon that's all going to go away, you know, the 100-day plan. If we had a strategic plan, that would be something every month, or if not monthly, quarterly. I would be able to report to the board, or the administrative team would be able to report back to the board and the community our progress, where we're at, and trying to achieve those key performance indicators. Like, it's just in education, we don't call them key performance indicators, you know, but it is just like that.
I think it provides a say it, do it, prove it.
Yeah.
That people can easily go to and see, you know, where are we at in these areas, you know, not just what we get from the state to show how we rank amongst the other school districts, but truly what's the feedback that we're getting from the surveys, from parents, from students, from staff. and displaying that, showing, what a quality school district we have. And, yeah, it's, whenever you're doing surveys and looking at getting whatever type of information you want to pull out of it, but there's a lot of goodness in it because it's tangible.
Yeah.
It's objective. It's not some subjective thing that one person says this and one person says this, and they run around and tell 20 people and everyone's thinking the same thing. No, this is something that it's hard and fast data that's provable.
Mhm. Yeah, good. Let's see, what else do we have here? To be a high functioning and a successful board, we need to establish and reflect upon ground rules. And that's something that you guys did. You created ground rules, you created your common commitments. You went over them at the beginning of the meeting. And, it's important to reflect on. Another is communication structures and processes. I think communication, I've said this before, it is the biggest weakness of every organization, including schools. And it's something that we can never be perfect at. So the more communication we have and the more that we can share the expectations and put it in writing for processes and structures, the better we will be. And the third is pros and cons of board committees and board of the whole, which we've hit on that. And then, again, the difference between pros and cons of committees as a whole versus just individual committees and staff. Operational staff fears. The board must be aware of those. We touched on that. And the third, decisions and conversations must be at the table in public. Communication channels are to be respected. Also, being prepared for meetings, doing research is important. Good.
I think one of the items that people talk about when it comes to committees, there's a feeding the beast component where people who are involved in these committees, especially, and it has to do with staff members that are part of, admin staff or subject matter experts that are part of the committee. And the committee does a tremendous amount of work pulling together whatever it is they're working on. And then they present it to the board, and because of whatever reason, perhaps it just takes on a life of its own. And you're pulling away cycles of these folks who are part of the district. They're teaching kids or they're part of some admin member. And it's taking away cycles from that interface with the kid, with the children, and so committees have to be beneficial. Otherwise, you're in the long run. If you have dysfunctional committees, you're taking away from the kids at the end of the day.
Even administration, they're taking away what else they would be doing if they weren't doing that cycle of presentations.
Yep.
Good. Good points. Okay, thank you for that. Just a couple of other things here before we wrap this chapter up. Just want to make sure I hit everything. We talked about the mystery of the board's strategic role. We talked about hidden meetings. We talked about the committees. Talked about the communication board. Reading implementation. Okay, what about on the bottom of page 44? Responding to staff concerns. There were 5 bulleted items there that they said astute boards do, the strategies that astute boards do. So the question, when you look at that at the bottom of page 44, what do you think of those 5 strategies that astute boards do regarding staff concerns?
So is this saying when do you receive staff concerns, or I guess I'm trying to figure out.
I think the board receives staff concerns and responding to them. It says the bottom line, there's many reasons why the board can make staff feel insecure. Even when that's not our intention. We're not trying to make anybody feel insecure, but there's many reasons why they can. And it says, and the astute board recognizes this reality and tries to counteract it by these 5 points. One of those points was communicating publicly and privately its confidence in staff. So whether you're here at the meeting and you're publicly talking, or you're in the community at a grocery store, a restaurant, whatever, or a private conversation with your neighbor, that you're really sharing your positive confidence in the staff is one of those strategies they said that we could do to help alleviate staff fears. What do you guys think of that second one? Anybody want to read it and then explain why you think that would help alleviate staff fears?
Setting clear and attainable board goals so that staff doesn't have to guess what the strategic priorities are. So just having goals set so that they're aware of,
What we're trying to do?
yeah, what we're trying to do. Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, if I was a teacher right now, I think the buildings have their goals right now and the things that they're working on. If we had a district strategic plan, they would know exactly what our focus is, those 4, 5, 6 items that we would come up with. There'd be no question. Because we're going to be focused on those things. That's it. It isn't going to be any other thing. So I know as the district administrator, I would feel more comfortable if we had that. You know, you guys are going to be evaluating me or whoever the future superintendents are. And if there's a plan, a strategic plan, and those goals are there, whoever's in, you know, doing that role would feel a lot more comfortable knowing this is what I got to work on. Right now, we don't have that. You know, I'm making stuff up that I'm focusing on and I'm reporting back in my 100-day plan, but having those goals out there agreed upon by all 7 and the people involved in the strategic planning, which would involve community members and staff, knowing that that is what the community also wants us to focus on, it would alleviate a lot of fears.
I think a good idea would be to actually ask the staff. It says there are many reasons why we can make staff feel insecure. Well, this is textbook driven, but I would like to know from a culture standpoint at Wrightstown, asking the administrators or asking, you know, teachers at the elementary, middle school, and high school, like just groups, you know, or sample size of each one to say what would make you feel insecure from, you know, the board. Typically like in a survey, just look for themes, you know what I mean?
And what do they expect of the board?
Exactly.
What do they want us to be aware of? It would be key, right?
Right.
Yeah, good points.
I think one of the key things in that second bullet is attainable. It's part of that SMART goal process, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it does say that word attainable.
Yeah, you can have a clearly defined goal, but if the staff doesn't believe it's attainable, that goal is going nowhere.
Yeah, for instance, I think what you're saying is something like, we have 1,300 kids and the board says, we want 1,400 by next year. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
The use of SMART goals, right, Tony?
Yep.
Specific, measurable,
Attainable,
relevant.
relevant, and time driven.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Those are some of the main, I mean, we could sit here and talk about all these pages in this chapter for a few hours and go through page by page, but these are the high level themes that I picked out and that you guys picked out. Anybody have anything else to share in regards to chapter 3 on communication?
I think that third bullet in there is something that is worth repeating, resisting the temptation to tactically micromanage. We've heard him say a number of times over the year, board and sustain is something we shouldn't be micromanaging.
Right.
Let the, we're at strategic, let the tactical folks do their job and let the operational folks do their job. We shouldn't be crossing into other lines.
One thing I just want to point out is the use of advisory committees. I don't know if we've ever had use of advisory committees other than the ad hoc committee for the human growth and development. But I guess I would like to know what the board feels about having board advisory committees with the community to talk about certain things on page 59. For example, I work for an educational institution. Today we had an advisory committee with regard to business management, supply chain management. And what we do is we talk about trends, we talk about curriculum. We want to make sure that our curriculum is current with what the industry is doing, and our partners that are part of the advisory committee are the employers within our area. We also talk about graduate follow-up data. We talk about enrollment. We talk about, college changes, strategic direction from the college. What else do we, just some of the things that are going on, and we get feedback, and then we try to make sure that we're adjusting our programs to what the advisory committees are telling us. And we have 2 advisory committee meetings a year, 1 per semester. They last about an hour and a half. There's supplements that we give. They get like a packet. But I guess if you wanted to have ongoing, more transparent communication, that would be something to do, would be to have advisory committees. And if you focus those advisory committees on the committees that we first started, which is an HR committee, a curriculum committee, a finance committee, and I can't think of the other one, a policy committee. You, instead of having board committees, you would have advisory committees that would represent those areas to give back the feedback to the board, so that we're more transparent with all of the things that we're responsible to do versus a 7-person board. And, everybody doing their own jobs, the admin, the teachers and staff, you see what I mean?
Mhm.
So when I read this advisory committee thing, I guess I would say, I would propose that this board would take a look at establishing an advisory committee for one of those topics as just a pilot, just to see if it does anything for transparency or for the district. It's just an idea. So I thought that was a really good insight on page 59.
Yeah, and then it would be a matter of how often do these advisory committees meet? What is the job description? Because they're advisory, so they just give feedback to the board.
Yeah.
And then what does the board do with that feedback? Are they going to make decisions based on that?
So
Or
what,
just take it into consideration? I guess it would also depend on
yeah,
how deep in the weeds the information is given to the advisory committee to give back that feedback.
yeah, and that's a good question, because one of the things, our process that we use is that we have a 2-year commitment from our, I want to say public, our partners, right? So they're committed for 2 years on this advisory committee. We give a real simple 5 things that you need to look at, and I think I mentioned them already. But I do see more community engagement, and I do see that this community really wants to be engaged in the district. And maybe that's one thing that this board could do is, have maybe just one advisory committee that you meet twice a year on just one of those topics to see how well it goes. And then if you find out it's not working, at least give it a shot to see and get the feedback from the community. Just an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Jeff and Mike have already started that with the community committee.
Yeah, the subcommittee for the facility. Yeah, I mean, something like that. I think that's great.
Where are we at here? Well, 45 minutes, that's approximately what we anticipated.
Okay.
Unless anybody has anything else to discuss or share. Can go to closed session and go through the business pieces.
Before we go to closed session, I'd like to make a motion to move the sorry contract and the open. Thanks for transparency for the community.
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
The contract update from Ron with just the dates.
Oh, you mean for the TSA?
Yeah,
I'd second that one.
Yeah, it's a closed session topic, but I have no problem, bringing it out and open. So when you look at, the TSAs that some of our teacher or our administrators have right now, they have a date when it is administered. One is October 15th, and then if it's in the spring, it's May 15th. And so mine does not have that date. And so I'm just requesting, I didn't think of it until after I was working on these administrative contracts and seeing that there is a date. The older administrators who have been here for a while, they have actual retirement language. And we got away from that here in this district. And so we're giving TSAs. But so I'm just asking to have the same dates that the other administrators have.
So a couple things, Rain, it would be helpful if you could give that information to me or Ron prior to bringing it to the board so that, I have a script I have to follow here. So I don't know if this is something that we want to discuss in the closed session or in the open
I
session.
guess if it's going to get into evaluation and type of thing, for your sake, you're better off to do that in closed than in open.
Okay, because I need to
But if
know.
you're just going to have a general conversation about, do you want to be consistent or not, that's fine.
I mean, I'm just looking for a general conversation, I guess. So.
Okay,
I mean,
Are you seeing if there's action taken to bring it back out into open? Is that what you're asking?
well,
What,
I guess just to talk about, Ron just explain the request and the reasoning behind it. Do we follow the accounts that are currently in disbursement arrangement, right? That's
Yeah,
what
the
it's looking
contract, the
at.
current administrative contracts, yeah.
And then provide the reason why we'd be looking at those dates, but I mean, I go back to contract and it states completion, so I don't know payment wise beforehand or after. And then the question I would have is how hard is it to deploy that after the June 30th? How does that work? With the
So
TSA?
that what we need.
So I can talk a little bit about the TSA. So TSAs are rather new. As Ron said, most administrators have retirement language, which a lot of benefits post-retirement. We're doing away with that because it's costly. So when Andy came, he was given a TSA. When we hired Corey, he was given a TSA. Kind of a practice when we hire the new principals, they'll have a TSA as well. They won't have that benefit. Just looking to streamline those dates. So Andy and Corey's contract have specific dates on when that contribution is made. We'd like to be consistent so that from a payroll standpoint, we know we're doing it at this time every year and not have kind of a spider web of when things have to happen. Understand that, Ron's situation is a little bit different, hiring him in the middle of the year, and the contract did not specify a date. So when Hannah talked about it, to me, that language says June 30th. If the board wants to do something different, then this would be an opportunity to do that as part of that. So that's really the conversation.
So then are these two dates the same dates that all of the other contracts read, or why were those dates picked?
So when the contract came in, it was October 15th. Did the same thing for Corey's. we did hire him after that, so we made an exception for that. But his contract going forward says October 15th. So would look to be consistent on, you know, the contract for next year to be October 15th, but as the interim contract being through June 30th, you know, it's either June 30th, to me, it's either June 30th or the board decides something else.
So this isn't a Ron thing, this is a consistency thing.
It's a consistency thing, and, you know, he had asked about the payment, you know, we need the contract and it says upon completion. To me, that says June 30th, and, you know, if he's looking for something different, that's up to her. You know, so, you know, honestly, we can pay at any time, but we would like it to be consistent, so in Ron's situation, you know, if we're gonna make a payment between now and June 30th, we just need to know what date that's gonna be from a payroll standpoint, and then we'd like to be consistent going forward. So all, you know, the premium principals that we hire, they'll all get a payment on October 15th, according to getting as well. So we do it all at once.
Okay,
So why would we move it from June 30th to May 15th?
That's up to.
I think
Ron
May
and the board.
15th, one of the contracts, I think, is getting their TSA in May, I believe. Isn't that right?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Okay, I thought one of the newer people had that.
So is that a once a year typical?
One right now,
And is it for when?
it would be October 15th.
But
would be the next-
He was hired after October.
Yeah, so we paid him, January 15th.
Oh, January
He was hired
15th?
in December,
Okay.
so we paid him.
I thought it was May 15th.
So
Well, it's a once a year?
it's a once a year payment, not a continual payment, so it's a lump sum, yeah.
Alright.
any more discussion, or do we want to just go into closed session?
Make the motion.
Okay. All right, so I make a motion to go into closed session under finance executive session. The Board of Education may, upon motion duly made and carried, convene in a closed session under one or more of the following exemptions provided in section 19.851C, Wisconsin statute, for the following purposes: considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C, staff compensation models and benefits for 2025 and 26. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor? And anyone opposed? All right, motion carried. So at this time, we will go into a closed session.
I think you typically do a roll call.
Oh, sorry, I do have roll call right there. All right,
Just trying to do the minutes.
so, let's do a roll call to go into closed session. Mike?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Angela, yes. Melinda?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Tiffany? Yes. And Rainey?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
6:53.
Six